Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Joseph Decker with the Murfreesboro Fire Rescue. This evening we're going to be covering some fire hose, a little bit of nozzles and streams, and then most of what we're going to be talking about is attack lines. So again, my name is Joseph. I'll be conducting the class this afternoon. Our topic tonight is, again, we're talking about hose, more importantly attack hose and the way we have them set up and their use in the fire service. Our objectives for this class is just to kind of cover a general knowledge of the hose, how to couple and uncouple, some considerations to take into effect, things we have set up with our department, and things of that nature. If anybody wants to check the references, you can find this in Chapter 16 of the Jones and Bartlett Firefighter 1 and 2 manual. So when we get started talking about hose, you want to kind of understand how it's built in order how to use it. So in hose construction, it's constructed of an inner waterproof liner. Essentially, we use jacketed hose for most of the stuff we use around here. It can be double jacketed or rubber jacketed. Again, if you go on the trucks, most of it's lined. We use the pre-connected. So it breaks down into 3 layers. Your inner is usually more of a rubber kind. It's a waterproof liner. It's what actually holds the water in there, most of the pressure. Your 2 outer layers pretty much contain that together and keep it from bursting, and those are also to protect it from abrasions, burns, and things of that nature. So when we talk about attack hose, typically you're going to see 1.5 inches and 1 3/4. Most commonly around here we have 1 3/4, and that's our attack line. Both use 1.5 couplings, can be operated by 1 firefighter, but typically in most department setups you'll see 2 firefighters on a hand line, if not more. Most common pre-connected lengths go somewhere between 150 and 350 feet. For our department, typically we'll see 200 feet pre-connects on our trucks. Big difference here, the 1.5 inches generally flows between 60 and 125 GPM, and 1 3/4 can flow anywhere between 120 and 180 GPM. Does anybody know kind of the acronym that we use when we talk about combating fire?
Wet stuff on the red stuff.
It's not really an acronym. So common terminology or phrasing that you may hear is we want to go GPM versus BTU, so our gallons per minute overcome the fire in the BTUs. Another thing we use for attack hose are 2.5. It's generally used to attack larger fires. Again, we get larger BTUs, we want to flow more GPM. Typically you're going to see those range about 250 gallons a minute. A lot of times it's going to take at least 2 firefighters to take that inside of a building. It can be handled by one with proper technique. And then in some cases you can flow up to 350 gallons a minute with those. Is anybody familiar with NFPA 1710 as to what that regards on fire flow? Okay, so NFPA 1710 states that when we go on a fire and we conduct fire evolutions, the first arriving engine should pull 2 pre-connects off of the truck, and between those 2 pre-connects they need to be flowing, between the 2 of them, 300 gallons per minute. So if that was the case, your 2 1 3/4 flowing 150 gallons a minute, or 2.5 with 1 3/4 backup line. That's what NFPA says the standard is for us pulling up on the engine. I believe somewhere in the range of 400 seconds, so a couple of minutes to get those lines off and start flowing. So here, picture of our Georgia Slider 9. You can see that we have those 200-foot pre-connects. We have a smooth bore nozzle on one and 2 fog nozzles pre-connected. They are single stacked, so they're built on top of each other. Around here we pretty much just use the Baker layer with the triple stack, as you may know. And then of course in the back we have our 2.5 if we need to extend for further reach or combat more larger fire with more water. Another type of attack line that we can get to and use is a bumper line. A lot of our trucks around here with Murfreesboro have those. A little bit different kind of hose, and we'll talk about that here in a few minutes, but it's essentially a 100-foot section of 1 3/4, something that we can deploy a little bit faster and put up a little bit faster. A lot of times for trash fires, car fires, and things of that nature. It's a little bit easier to deploy and it's faster going for shorter distances. Something else we can use in attack line is our hotel pack. These are typically stored on the engine, bundled up such as this. On our truck in particular, we have 100-foot sections. We have 2 of those, so these would come in handy when you're not sure of the distance that you're going, or you have to go upstairs. Apartments, high-rises, hotels, medical center, any of those type of places when we're going in, we may not know where we can make that connection. So we take this with us, find out where the fire is, find out where we're attacking, and then figure out where we can charge our line and attack from there. A good scenario that I thought about earlier was if we were pulling up at Lowe's. We had a fire alarm there a couple of weeks ago. If we get dispatched for a fire in Lowe's, we may not know where it's at, and they may not be able to give us a good description. And with a warehouse like that, smoke is going to fill it pretty quickly, and it's going to bank in a lot of areas. So rather than pull up to the front door and pull 200 feet off the line and get a little bit inside the door and run out of hose, we can flow our 2.5 off of the truck, connect it to a standpipe, or deploy our hotel packs inside, and then find out where the fire is at, start stretching our line, and have the truck meet us outside, connect, and then we have more line to work with. Another attack hose that we don't typically see a lot in our department, but a lot in the counties, is a booster hose. It's usually carried on a hose reel, also known as a booster reel. Usually somewhere between 150 feet to 200 feet. It's usually rubber, kind of like a garden hose material. You'll see this a lot used for brush fire. Easy to handle, low GPM, low PSI. I've seen some pretty crazy things done with it for brush fires. A lot of times it's going to be somewhere around a 1-inch line, flows between 40 and 50 gallons a minute. Again, it's used for small outdoor fires and trash dumpsters. You'll see them on hose rails on the back of brush trucks, quick attack engines, things like that. So just an example here of a brush truck. We've got the booster reel on the back. There's two setups, and we'll talk about here in a few slides. There's a forestry line pre-connected in the back as well, but it's something that you can roll out, carry around, not too worried about getting dirty or braided. It washes off easy, and it has a button to reel it back on real quick and simple, easy to deploy and easy to put up. So again, going back to that attack hose, forestry hose is not something we see a lot of around here. The Department of Forestry, Department of Wildland, Department of Interior, those guys like to use it. It's very lightweight, it's very easy to deploy, and it's very easy to put up. Used for wildland and ground fires. Usually going to be around that 1-inch or 1.5-inch size. We talk about couplings. All of our hoses connect with couplings. Most typically you're going to see sexed couplings. Standardized hose threads are made most by fire departments. Threaded you're going to see typically up to about that 3-inch, sometimes 4-inch. And then when you get into larger sizes they use what's called a Storks connection. For threaded couplings, if there's any leaking when you put those together, you can use a pair of spanner wrenches to tighten them down and to get your seals a little bit better. Obviously you want to tighten them down until the leakage is stopped. The good thing about threaded couplings, most of the hoses nowadays are made with Higby cuts. Anybody familiar with a Higby? Tell them about it.
Yeah, I'm just familiar with them.
Are you familiar with it? Okay. Well, a Higby cut is those little notches in those couplings where you can line up if you're fumbling with gloves or fumbling in the dark, or if you can shine your light just enough to see where those notches are. You pair those notches together and it'll spin together and lines the threads up. So Storks type connections you're going to see on mostly LDH or large diameter hose. Something we use a lot here in Murfreesboro for our supply lines. It's neither male nor female. They match together and then they'll lock into place. They're mated face to face. They go in together, get about a quarter turn, and then they'll lock. Sometimes you'll need them to adapt. On our truck in particular, we have the adapter already on the Storks connection so we can attach to a hydrant. But if we were to pull that off and go to a truck, we'd have to take that back off. But a lot of trucks have those adapters built in. And so for ladder 9 on our truck, if we're deploying to a hydrant, we can see there's a blue strap connected. These match together, and then here's the attachment for the hydrant. And again, we have that blue strap for rapid deployment, tucks up in there and kind of hangs off a little bit, so when we're going back, we can just grab that strap over our shoulder and head onto the hydrant. When we're talking about uncoupling hose, obviously it's been pressurized, so if you'll notice, even if you hand tighten couplings, you go out there after a fire or after you've been flowing water, they've tightened up a little bit so the water and the pressure has gotten into those seals and tightened them down. So you want to make sure that your hose lines have been discharged or you've bled the water out. Should never be disconnected under pressure. Always shut off your water and bleed those lines out. Again, you want to relieve that water pressure. It's going to make it very, very difficult to tighten. Even in the LDH, you want to make sure that air and water is out before we start uncoupling. The spanner wrenches make it a whole lot easier. So here in a few minutes, we'll go out in the bay and we'll practice using this drill a little bit. This is one of our drills in the firefighter handbook, performing the one firefighter knee press method, uncoupling the fire hose. Step 1, pick up the connection by the female coupling end. Step 2, you'll turn the connection upright, resting the male coupling on the firm surface. And so what this is going to allow you to do is, rather than sit there and fool with it, you know, a lot of times two people come together, you put it between your legs and try to uncouple it, something like that. You can simply press it on the ground and use your knee to provide a little leverage, and then you can uncouple it like that. And to follow that through, you'll put your knee down, creating this little wedge here. Press firmly down on it with your body weight, turn the female swivel counterclockwise, loosen the coupling, and then you can unbolt it. questions? Sure.
You mentioned right here, you got the hoses and they have different nozzles. You've got a fog nozzle on one line and a smooth bore on the other. Can you explain to us the advantages and disadvantages, pros and cons of each one of those nozzles?
Sure. So that's a really big topic in the fire service, and it boils down to where you go, the tradition of the department, the culture of the people in it, the training that they've had. When you boil it down to basics, the biggest difference between the two is your GPM. So your smooth bore is going to flow a lot more water with a lot less friction loss and a lot less nozzle reaction. So when you're on the hose and you're flowing, the fog nozzle is pushing all of that water through a mechanism, and that's breaking that mechanism, or that mechanism is breaking the water into droplets and spreading it out in a pattern. Even when you change that back, you've still got, you can have a straight stream but not a solid stream. And so you're getting all of that friction going into a mechanism. When you take that out and go into a smooth bore, you're getting all of that water pressing straight through and going. So you're not getting as lot of pressure. So when you operate the smooth bore nozzle, you can actually operate with a lot more water with a lot lower GPM. So even if you're using the same size hand line, 1 3/4 inches, your fog nozzle is going to run somewhere around the 140, 150 GPM range. Or excuse me, PSI range. When you're operating a smooth bore nozzle, you're operating typically around the 80 PSI range at the nozzle. So that's one big thing. You can operate your truck at a lot lower pressure and pump a lot more water. Again, with that, some of the arguments against that is that it takes a very good practical application of that water. You're burning through it a lot quicker. One of the previous classes I taught, I broke it down to how many minutes you have for each nozzle and for each going in. But on 1 3/4 inches, if I'm not mistaken, if your fog nozzle, you've got somewhere around the 6 to 8 minute range if you're flowing about 150 GPM. When you break that down in a smooth bore, you've got somewhere in the 4 to 6 minute range. Your fog nozzle is also great. It's been used for a long time. It works. It puts out fire, both dispersed water. The thing is, you have mechanical advantage using a fog nozzle. So if you're breaking into things where you don't need that straight stream, you're not trying to get that penetration, you're not trying to get that reach or that GPM, you can change that pattern a little bit. It's really good for going into car fires, going into dumpster fires, hydraulic ventilation, sticking in a window, things where you may need to even dial it back a little bit. So working on the side of a road, putting out some grass, you may want to open it up in a little bit wider pattern instead of just spray it everywhere. Cleaning the bee off a road. One good thing about the fog nozzle too, you can use it for foam applications. So if you're trying to aerate that and put foam onto something, or if gasoline spill, whatever the case may be, smooth bore's not going to really do that for you. So your fog nozzle, you're able to put foam inside of that and spray out, even without a foam ejector. So the biggest arguments that come between it is your gallons per minute going in. A lot of people, you go in with 1 3/4 inches with a fog nozzle, and you're only putting so much water on the fire. So in those first few minutes of that fire, you're really wanting to combat it. So you have to look at what your size of the house is versus how much fire you've got and really make that decision. Both the nozzles, both flow water, it just depends on what you're only using.
So with that being said, do the hoses depend on what nozzles you can put on? Because the hoses flow different water flow, you say?
Not so much the hoses, it may go back to the different sizes. A big thing to consider is that if you're flowing on 1 3/4 inches, you can use that fog nozzle or that hand line or that smooth bore. If you go up to the 2.5, that may dictate a little bit of what your manpower is going to require. Obviously, you're going to be flowing a lot more water on the 2.5 with a smooth bore. You're not going to have as much nozzle reaction. Put a fog nozzle on, it's going to be quite a bit more. So that's when you're going to really want to see 2 or 3 fire bodies a lot more. So it just depends on your application. Another good thing for that 2.5, you'll see, especially the way that we have it set up, you can extend that 2.5 out and break that down into 1 3/4 inches. So the way that our nozzle was set up, and a good thing about it is that you can take the tips off or take the attachments off and then connect them to it. And so our 2.5 nozzles usually go down and reduce to 1 3/4 inches attachment. So that's another good thing if we can deploy them. Good question. Any other questions?
Earlier you were talking about the front bumper hose. Why is it set up different from the other hoses?
So the bumper line is a quick line, something that we can get to on the interstate, something for garbage fire, it's something if we really just don't want to deploy a pre-connect and have to pull a Baker blade and pull 66 feet off the rig, we can use this. One person can get it out. The way that our truck is set up with that Pierce and the way that the compartment is, it fits very well with the donut roll. A flat lay fits in there, but it kind of bulks up and it's not able to deploy quite as quick. And it's just how we have it set up on our truck. That way you can take the nozzle out, set it on the bumper, pick up the roll, and roll it out. Your firefighter comes up, he grabs the nozzle and runs off, and it's pretty much ready to deploy in just a couple of seconds. Versus having to take that flat layout, which is what a lot of bumper loads go to, and flake it out and flake it out and flake it out and wait for it to be stretched for you to flow it. So with that, it's kind of a two firefighter deployment method. One grabs the nozzle and runs, one takes the roll and throws it out. You can do it with one, but it's just a lot quicker deployment for the space that we have in the setup on our truck. And again, it's easy to pick up. It's 100 feet. Usually you can get to a car fire on the interstate with that, or just some rubbish on the side of the road. It's easy to clean off. It's rubber jacketed. We can roll it up pretty easily and stick it back in there versus having to clean the cotton jacketed hose. Roll out 200 feet of a pre-connect and then have to stack it back up, clean it, and put it back on our truck. Good question. Any other questions? Alright, so again, coming back to our skill, our hotel pack, it's two 50-foot sections. Our fighter Tyson here is going to demonstrate how we come down and do our one knee method of uncoupling. Again, you want to make sure that you've bled the line out, it's not charged, the water is out so it's not under pressure. So that knee down gives you that little bit of friction point so you can start to uncouple. Turn that counterclockwise and then it uncouples.